blah, blah. Not so horrible.
Did you say your morning prayers?
I said my morning prayer. I only got the one in my cereal. My cereal that I pour out every morning. It's like the prize inside of it. It only came with one. Did yours come with two prayers?
You're supposed to say at least 7. So
I need more cereal boxes.
My box came with 12. I don't know what you're doing. You're buying that discount prayer cereal.
Well, yeah.
The pre-real.
The pre-real. Yeah, I love
Pre-real.
my discount pre-real.
I personally hate it. Pre-real. Like the great value pre-real.
It's just bland, honestly. And you don't think bland has a flavor, but it does. It does have a flavor to it.
Comedy. What we're doing right now is comedy.
If you guys look up comedy in a dictionary, you
go to
pictures of us.
GoDaddy.
There we are.
Do you remember GoDaddy.com?
I remember. What was GoDaddy for? I remember seeing commercials for it.
I just remember those commercials with like the big breasted women and the white shirts that said GoDaddy.com.
What?
And I remember specifically my mom being pissed off about it because very
big-breasted
topical.
women?
Well, yeah, but no, very topical. They used to like use it to do something with the missionaries for the church. Like,
is that right?
Yeah, I don't specifically remember what it was, but it was like emails or something. And then the big-breasted women. Someone out there correct me.
That's crazy.
I remember this. If
How
I'm
could you
crazy,
ever forget big-breasted women?
But speaking of missionaries of the church,
Speaking of missionaries of the church, what does that have to do with today's episode?
I don't know. Isaac, co-host of the podcast.
Well, Derek, co-host of the podcast. Maybe it is because we watched Heretic from 2024.
So, just before we get started, first off, this is going to be a spoiler-free review until about halfway through the episode. Then it's going to be spoiler talk, no holds bars, no bars hold, no knob ball.
Take those bars and then throw them away.
We're
We're not holding them. We're not barring them. I don't know what they're doing. Throw them away to a bar. But you were safe until then. This is a safe space. Welcome into the space. Hello, it's me, Martha Davis. We're here to talk to you about a church movie. We're here to talk about the church, the Mormon missionaries of the LDS religion.
I will say another thing. And now, if you're listening to this episode, you know we're a little vile. We're a little terrible people. No, we're fine.
No, we're awful. We're horrible.
But we will be touching on a lot of religious topics today. So trigger warning there. A little bit of trigger warning for me, honestly.
This is an episode like made by and for Derek here.
Yeah.
Like he has the most to say on this matter because we saw this movie in the 4D experience, i.e. watching this movie in Utah.
Yeah, watching Heretic, a movie about Mormon missionaries in Utah. And I was in a very interesting position. So anyway, I gave you the trigger warnings. You know what's going on. We're going to go into the review.
Welcome to the good time. Welcome to Not So Horrible, a subsidiary of That Was Horrible.
Are we a subsidiary of ourselves?
It's ourselves, yeah. We pay ourselves to do other things.
Me, Derek, for 25 years of my 30-year life was an avid Mormon. I don't know if I was an avid Mormon, but I was definitely of the Mormon faith. I left for a while when I was in high school to my mom's chagrin, and then I rejoined, married my beautiful wife in the Jordan River Temple of Utah.
Shout out to Jordan River Temple.
And I've had a lot of experiences, both wonderful and terrible, in the Mormon religion. I mean, obviously, I'm no longer a member of the church, but for what it's worth, there was both good and bad experiences.
Right.
I think that is very important. And me, Derek, I don't know how important this is, but I feel like this is important.
Everything you say is important.
I am not what you would consider like a Jack Mormon or a hater of the Mormon religion. When I left the church, it was of my own volition, based on my own situations that I'm not going to get into because that's not important.
That's a whole thing.
DM me if you want those.
Yeah, Derek can talk about
it.
it.
Don't do that. But my point in saying this is I'm not a hater of religion. My whole family is still very much a part of the church. I respect everything that they do. Well, that's a different
everything.
I'm taking a haul. I'm trying to show that I am not here to bash the religion.
No, exactly.
And I'm not here to hate on the people.
You
who
have
are in
good
the
intentions with this in your discussions about it. You are not just here to bash on all of it and just be a naysayer the whole time, right?
Yeah, exactly.
As a man who was once inside and is now outside of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for what it's worth, I did not serve a Mormon mission, but my brothers did. And so many of my friends also served those missions. I chose instead to just get married in the temple. I married my high school sweetheart. So it was that kind of a situation when I hit romantic. 19, I had that choice laid in front of me. It was like, do you go on a mission? She's definitely going to find some other guy and leave you, because that's what always happens to every man.
It's fair.
Or
it's scary.
You're gonna tie that knot and make sure that you stay in this amazing relationship.
I didn't even know that was an option. I didn't know there were options like that.
To be fair, start talking about the religion now. It isn't really an option.
Okay.
I mean, growing up, I 100% expected to go on a Mormon mission.
Yeah.
When I hit 19, the next 2 years of my life were the mission.
This is the expectation that is
time.
set upon you, right?
And
it's less of an expectation. It's more like, you gotta do this,
absolutely.
right? It is deeper than an expectation put upon you.
From birth, you are given blessings that talk about your future, which most of the time include how you will go and spread the gospel and teach the word, right?
Yeah.
And so me growing up in that environment, watching my brothers do it, respecting my brothers for doing it, it was very much a situation where I was like, I'm 19, I'm going to go on a mission.
Yep.
So when I made the decision to get married instead of go on a mission, I mean, a lot of it was kind of out of fear for going on a mission.
Right.
I know we're talking about this a lot longer than the movie.
No, listen,
but
it's good to know.
It's information.
But yeah, it's funny because to tell you where I sit on all of this stuff, it was funny watching this movie with Derek, who was raised in this stuff, has so much knowledge about it. Me, grew up without any religious affiliation whatsoever, none of that in my life at all. Which is really funny. Me moving out, because I moved out to Utah in like 2013, and it was a huge culture shock because it is ingrained in so much of the community around us here in the valley, and there's so much that I didn't know, so much that I am learning, so much that I still don't know. Even just like knowing Derek as long as I have, I feel like I'm still learning new things all the time about this. Yeah. It is so deep, and there's so much that I don't know. So it was really interesting for me as a person to come into this movie who knows absolutely nothing about the stuff. Derek here has all of the knowledge of the stuff.
And I mean, I don't know if I have all the knowledge, but I have a good amount of knowledge. I think it's at 25. I think I left the church when I was either 23 or 24. So it's actually been like 6 or 7 years.
But having these two perspectives...
It all blurs.
Yeah, having these two perspectives of it is kind of neat, though, right? Because we came in with no religious affiliation, then you with a lot of it.
Yeah, so going back to watching the movie,
yeah.
I was sitting between Isaac, who is non-affiliated religious,
and then sort of a free thinker. I'm a rogue agent. Just going where the wind carries me. Wow, that's not what it's about.
You're so cool.
Just was never a part of my upbringing.
Anyway, and then to my left was our buddy Seth, who is a religious studies major, Jewish man.
Wild, yes.
So like very devout man.
Yes.
So it was like
three very different perspectives going into this movie.
And I loved that aspect of it. And then on the other side of Isaac was an elderly couple in Utah who
I was terrified. I don't know why, but like I saw this older couple, they looked a bit conservative. I'm like, okay, based on what I know about this movie, I feel like this movie's going to say some things about faith, religion, Mormonism that are kind of going to shake some people, right? And so this conservative looking old couple next to me, I'm like, they're going to have a fuss about this movie. They're going to be mad about it. There were some moments where like they would say a thing that I would laugh at, and I would like look over to the side of me. I'm like, did that offend you? Like,
did you laugh?
Are you mad? Are you mad at me?
Surprisingly,
though, they did not move a muscle the whole movie. No, I thought they're gonna be like scoffing or shaking their heads, or maybe they're on the other side of things. Maybe the other side of my assumption, they would like nod along with it. I don't know what their life is like, but they just kind of sat there, no reactions whatsoever, then got up and left the theater. So nothing came of that, but it was kind of funny to me. I was a little scared that they were next to me.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so Heretic, it came out in 2024. Two young religious women are drawn into a game of cat and mouse in the house of a strange man. That description doesn't really do this movie justice. I don't feel like, but I feel like it's important to talk about the two directors of this movie, Scott Beck and Brian Woods. Scott Beck and Brian Woods worked together on 65, A Quiet Place, Haunt. Those are all other movies that they have written and directed. So, They know what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
They didn't direct Quiet Place, but they wrote it. So.
Oh, okay, I see. So not their first foray into this stuff. They know how to write stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is definitely apparent in the very long sequences of like monologuing in this movie. There are very long long speeches that go on in this that are honestly quite well written.
Yeah, I would compare it. This is going to sound weird. I would compare this movie to Kill Bill 2.
Okay.
Because in Kill Bill 2, as everybody knows, that movie's like mostly talking.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that movie
It's
is.
kind of a
So
thing
it's
you
like,
don't see in many movies anymore. You
you
don't
really
see
don't.
movies that are honestly like so dialogue driven and just go on like what you would assume is probably like 20 pages long of like monologues by Hugh Grant in this one. So, but it's kind of neat. You don't see it often. You don't see it done so well either.
No, exactly.
Because in these long speeches, I feel like I was hanging on every word, and that's a credit to like Hugh Grant in this movie. He plays the main villain of the story in this one. He's the stranger that kind of traps two missionaries in his house.
Yeah. So let's talk about that real quick.
Get into it.
Sophie Thatcher and Chloe East both play two sister missionaries. Where are they? I don't even remember where they are.
Where are they at?
Where are they?
You mean like where in the world are they?
Where are they?
Somewhere in America, I think. It doesn't not very.
I don't know. I don't know where they are.
Yeah, no, I never thought to think about
It's
that.
a beautiful place.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to know. You know how there's tags in IMDb?
Yeah.
One of the tags is magic underwear, and that
magic underwear
garments. For
why
those
is
who
why is that?
wonder.
What does that mean, Derek? As our fountain of knowledge here.
Fountain. Oh my gosh, the word fountain is ingrained in mold culture too. So for those of you who don't know, people of the LDS or Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints faith, when you go through the temple, you receive magic garment. Not magic. You receive.
No, they are. It's magical.
No. That's extremely disrespectful. Actually,
no, that's the thing, right? That's why it's kind of it's a joke made in this movie at their expense.
Yeah. Well, it's a joke that people make all the time.
Yeah,
I would get comments every once in a while. I was like, oh, so your garments are showing. Oh, your magic garments are your magic underwears are showing.
Yeah,
anyway,
it's just like a thin underlayer of clothing.
Yeah, and they have a whole lot of symbolism and stuff like that, and you learn about that when you're going through the temple.
Yeah.
That's not the place to talk about that. Anyway, so they are the two religious women. They're two Mormons.
Mm-hmm.
They are going through their day. They end up at this man's house. Now, in the Mormon religion, two sister missionaries cannot be in the home of an opposite gender person without someone of the same gender present. For very obvious reasons.
Of course.
And so that is like a big thing in this movie. They're like, can we come in? Can we come in? And he's like, oh, my wife's in the other room.
In there. They're like, okay, if the wife is there, then it's okay for us, right?
And then he locks the door, and they are no longer able to get out.
And then there's a prolonged period of time where no wife shows up. And it's like, now this is a very uncomfortable situation. Now we feel trapped in here.
Yeah. I mean, Trapped by M. Night Shyamalan. No, so the movie right away, as soon as they enter that house, you want them to leave. You're like, I don't know what's going to happen to you. I don't know what this man's motives are.
No, of course.
I am so tense.
That was another thing, too, is like all I knew about it from the trailers, anything we'd heard about is like, okay, they're Mormon missionaries. They get trapped in this man's house. What are his intentions? What is he going to do in this house? And how scared should I be? Because automatically, yes, door locks behind them. It's like, okay, I'm uncomfortable. I want them out of this house right away.
Exactly. And instead...
And it's tough because Hugh Grant is such a disarmingly charming man.
So charismatic.
It's like
he does.
I know you're the bad guy in this movie. I already know that. But damn it, you're charming. Like, God, I'm disarmed by it. Exactly.
And you want to know what his motives are. Like, you want to know what he's doing.
Yes. What are you up to, little Hugh Grant?
And then he starts talking. And you're like, oh, wait, I want to hear what you have to say. And I was put in a very interesting situation where a lot of the things that he was discussing with these women, because as the movie goes along, he starts trying to break down their faith. He's asking them questions that are very difficult. And as someone who was Mormon for most of their life, those questions happen. I remember when I was 10, my best friend, Dylan, my good buddy, shout out to you if you're listening, he was not a member of the church. And I remember having full conversations with him like this, where he would ask me some of these disarming questions that didn't make sense to him.
Yeah,
because they weren't
big
ingrained
debates,
in
right?
him.
Yeah.
And I remember being in their shoes. I wasn't a missionary at the time, but I felt like I was, right? And I was the one trying to, disprove their disproving.
And I'm sure that's a huge portion of going on a mission, right? Going out and trying to spread your gospel and change these people's lives and stuff, right? I'm sure there are lots of people you meet that are going to try to poke holes in your stuff and try to disprove all these things and debate with you on this religious level about your faith and your beliefs and stuff like that. So this is an extreme situation of that, which I'm sure lots of, if not all, missionaries have had to face,
All of them. It's a very difficult, I mean, again, I haven't been on a mission, so I can't fully attest to that, but in a sense, I have experienced that many times in my life.
It's really hard to like keep a smile on your face and not instantly get like offended and mad about that kind of stuff, which I think Chloe East and Sophie Thatcher do a great job of that, like doing the best job at like taking in what was said to them and, you know, just like trying not to be upset about it and trying to turn it around and be like, okay, here's how I'm going to professionally answer this question that you posed to us. It's much to think about, you know, it's not easy to go through.
No, it's not. And it is just something that I've dealt with a lot in my life, and it's very stressful.
Yes.
It's very stressful, especially
I felt stressed just watching it.
Now at the point in my life, like being on both sides, like now I'm like, okay, now I'm saying some of those things that used to be said to me, and that's a very interesting situation.
Did that put you in an interesting situation here to be like, you have been like, I'm not saying exactly like either sides of these, but like there were points that like maybe Hugh Grant's character made that you like now Derek would probably side with, but then also things they would say as the missionaries that you would also probably side with. Like,
absolutely.
Was that just this weird game of like tug of war for you watching this? You're like, I'm on both of their sides at the same time.
It was extremely alarming to me, because there were times I would find myself being like, yeah, that's it. You're saying it right there.
You're saying yes,
but then
exactly.
I'd be like, oh, but he's saying that.
Yeah.
Like, oh wait, I can't agree with this.
It's tough, right? There are some good points made, of course. Yeah. He's a smart, charming man. He says things the right way. It's tough to disagree with him.
So obviously this movie it devolves into some insanity, and we're not going to spoil that for you here. But what I will say is like the way it devolves is very smart. It's very intellectual.
Yeah,
this
absolutely.
movie kind of unravels this maze that is religion at its core. So I kind of want to just jump into spoilers. I know we haven't been going that long. Oh, we've been going a while. But I kind of want to jump into spoilers. But before we do that, I did want to say, like, if religious discussion is something that you're very interested in and you're okay with a little horror and a little gore, then this movie is for you.
Yeah.
I think that this movie, I was telling Isaac before we started that in my Letterboxd review for this movie, I said...
Oh, you put it very well.
I said, this movie perfectly shows the faith crisis through the lens of horror, and I loved that. I really did. For me, I recommend this movie. I think it was a good horror movie on top of all that. Yeah. But for me... And I can't speak for you. You can say what you said, what you felt in a second. But for me, it was a good horror movie. I liked the idea of showing someone's de-evolution in faith or dissolving of faith in the lens of horror, because when I left the church, that's how it was for me. It was a crisis. It was loss of self. It was loss of religion. It was loss of community. It was loss of purpose. It was all of those things times 100 in my life. Like, it was so hard. And so to see that in the like light of horror was genius to me.
Yeah.
And maybe
it's just a match made in heaven. It's peanut butter and jelly, right?
Yeah, exactly.
These things just go together.
Because for me, it was my own horror movie.
Yes.
It was my own experience of dealing with my
nightmare,
own
right?
demons, so to speak. And I became an atheist. I became a strong non-believer in any god, and where I am now doesn't matter. But like, that's how I started it. Yeah. And so to go from there is an afterlife, there is a God, this is my one true religion, to
the complete opposite of that.
That's a pretty big hill to fall off of.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think that doing that with horror is a really, really genius idea. And I think people that go into this movie expecting a jump scare fest or any like mainstream horror, you're not going into it for the right movie.
No, yeah.
I think that this movie is definitely a thinker. It is a philosophical
if
journey.
You enjoy like critical thinking kind of movies, you know, you enjoy that kind of debating and breaking down certain topics and trying to see other angles of that. Because that is something I want to say before we get into the spoiler territory of this stuff. I saw a tweet that said they were talking about Hugh Grant's character in this and saying he's basically if like ex-Mormon Reddit was a person.
Yeah.
And I was like, to that angle, I was like, I feel like that could get kind of annoying. I'm like, is this a movie made by like ex-Mormon people just going to bash on the religion? Because I wasn't sure if I would enjoy that. And I was a little nervous going into it, like
Me too.
Curious if that's what it was going to be. But it is not just that. Because like Hugh Grant's character does not only break down, it's not just about Mormonism. It's not the LDS religion specifically. No. He actually breaks down several sects of different religious affiliations,
and how
right?
they kind of worked within each other, how they were all created.
Yes. And it's kind of fun because like the way he brings them up and discusses them, he compares them to like normal things you would know about, like fast food chains and like board games and music and stuff. Like he has very
and
good
Jar Jar Binks.
and Jar Jar Binks, and he does a fucking terrible Jar Jar Binks impression.
He also sings a very popular Radiohead song, which is the funniest thing
I
I've
just
ever heard in my
have the
life.
Jar Jar Binks impression. Has he ever seen the character?
No.
Does he know anything about Jar Jar Binks? Is
that a spoiler? If
it's
that's a
probably
spoiler, I'm so sorry.
I'm so sorry.
I mean, I knew about Jar Jar going in. You didn't believe me.
I
You're like,
thought you
"That's
were
not gonna
messing
happen."
with me, and
No.
then it happened, and then he does an impression that you will just have to see on your own.
you do.
I don't think this man has ever seen Jar Jar Binks at all. I'd never seen a Star Wars movie to that effect.
I think Hugh Grant has, but his character probably hasn't.
Yeah,
really.
that's fair,
and I
that's
liked
fair.
that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm giving the movie too much credit, but I thought that was genius having him do a bad impression.
It's wonderful. No, it was very funny.
Watching these two sister missionaries who were terrified out of their mind.
Yeah.
Watch this old man do a Jar Jar Binks impression is the funniest.
But so what I was saying about that is like it is not just someone sitting here on like, you know, just call it like ex-Mormon Reddit sitting here and telling you about why it's bad, why all these things you believe in are wrong and stuff like that. Because not only does he do this, again, it's not just about the LDS religion. He does cover,
that is very important.
Yeah, he covers other religions as well. What is great about that is like he gets his chance to say some things, and then these two characters challenge him.
Yeah.
There are moments where they talk against things he says, and you can tell
In a
it works
great
on
way.
him. They do
Yeah.
kind of shut him up a couple times.
Oh, for sure.
Kind of going against the things that he says and saying things that he wasn't expecting. He thinks he's got them on the ropes, and then they actually are a lot smarter. They're actually really smart characters.
Oh,
and I really enjoy the way they came through in this movie.
I want them to release another hour-long cut of all of the stuff they talked about.
Yeah.
Like, I want more.
Yeah.
I really, 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 really enjoyed the talking.
It was very
I think
well
that was my
written
favorite
and
part
well
of the movie.
performed.
The first half of the movie I liked better than the second
Yeah,
half of
absolutely.
the movie. I will say, like, it kind of goes a weird direction in the third act.
Yeah,
I
which is-
wasn't a huge fan of.
No, exactly. Because before we were recording, I told Derek, I'm like, this movie wasn't what I was expecting in a negative way, and then it wasn't what I was expecting in kind of a positive way, where like it went a very different direction, especially towards that third act, where I was like, I was not expecting any of this stuff to be happening, because I was curious where the horror comes in. I'm like, unless Hugh Grant does some despicable things to these poor missionaries, I don't know where the horror aspect of this comes in. I was really expecting the house to be more of a maze, because a lot of the marketing and the way the trailer does, it makes it seem like he has built this house in a very specific way. The house is actually not that complicated. It's a small house that doesn't go that far.
And actually, if you watch the trailer, which I would recommend not watching the trailer, you've already heard too much from us.
Yeah.
I would just go watch the movie if you're going to watch it. I expected the same thing.
Yeah.
I expected like a big maze. I expected there to be many, many rooms.
I was expecting them to get like split up and have to make these decisions and then have to like battle with each
almost
other.
like Saw.
Yeah,
I
something.
expected like a Saw.
I was really
situation
expecting something like that. And,
without
like,
gore.
Mild spoiler alert, that's not what happens in this movie. And like it went a very different direction. They're like, okay, this also works. It wasn't what I was expecting, but it's different there. But I do want to circle back to the fact that it's mostly Hugh Grant monologuing for very long periods of time. He is an impressive performer there. Like I said, he's captivating, he's charming. You want to listen to what he says. But not only that, he goes in great lengths in these discussions. And then Sophie Thatcher and Chloe East have to sit and react.
Oh yeah,
For like 30 minutes at a time.
So impressive on an acting standpoint.
And I remember I saw a thing about Sophie Thatcher saying how difficult that is as an actor to like have to sit and do nothing but react to things.
Yeah.
And I think we've mentioned it before. There's a huge thing in the acting world. They talk about acting is reacting. Exactly right. It's a thing that's ingrained in your brain if you've ever acted before.
Oh yeah.
And they really, really come through doing that in this movie. Their reactions the whole time, them trying to keep it together, trying to stay nice and pleasant throughout the whole experience, because they are still here representing their church and their religion and stuff. They don't want to yell at this man for trapping them in their house. They are very polite the whole time, and you can see them wanting to be polite, and then also like screaming internally at these things he's saying against their faith and stuff, and just like their confusion. And like they do so much without even saying that many words for a huge chunk of the movie.
It's pretty impressive, especially because they each have their own, like they do it in their own character.
Yes.
Like because one of them is almost dealing with their own faith crisis underneath, and not the one you expect.
Yes.
Dealing with their own faith crisis underneath the surface, and the other one is very devout, who is actually a convert to the church, which I loved that.
That was neat. I liked that a lot.
You don't understand the difference, though. It was such a good idea for the writers to make one person devout Molly Mormon from Utah, the other one from like Pennsylvania or something, who was a convert to the church. The perspectives of those two types of people is drastic.
Yeah, and I've heard a lot of people say this is like one of the most accurate depictions of like Mormon people on screen, right? Which is funny because like there are certain things they discuss and they say that you would not immediately assume that is something that is discussed, right? Like the opening scene.
Oh yeah,
they're discussing certain things things like I did not know that was I thought that was off the table to be talking about.
And it is, but also people are human.
People are people, exactly. And that's the thing. They humanize those characters immediately, right out the gate.
For that reason.
Yes, they're not just caricatures of this thing that people know within, like, media and stuff like that. They are real people who have real lives and real thoughts and things like that. But no, I thought it was an enjoyable time. Very, very well written and well performed by the 3 actors that are in it.
I want to circle back one more time before we move on to spoiler territory.
We're going to circle back one more time.
You said you were waiting to see what the horror was, and I think that this is a perfect example of how we differed.
Yeah.
Because from the beginning of the movie, before they were in their house, I felt the horror.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just my own perspective, but when they were walking through the street and like those kids bullied them, I felt more triggered and more horror at that than about 60% of the rest of the movie.
I mean, that totally tracks, though, right? That makes sense for you to to connect with that and to relate to that and feel that fear.
It put a pit in my stomach for the good majority of the movie. Like that from an ex-LDS person watching what happens at the beginning of this movie, you're like, I am now uncomfortable. I know people have been through that. I personally have been through that at different points in my life.
Which I think was a really good thing for them to do because it automatically makes you root for these characters. Because I feel like, LDS people, the religion as a whole can get kind of shit on in media and stuff like that. There's a whole musical that makes fun of it, like
they bring that up.
Yeah, they do actually. And so I do like the fact that they start out that way and you were already rooting for these characters, right? That maybe you come in being like, oh, these silly girls and their silly religion, but like, they're human and they go through some sad things. Like some bullying out on the streets just for being missionaries.
Yep. All right. I think we're going to go into spoilers now. If you want to watch Heretic without any spoilers, definitely turn this off. Go check it out and come back. But yeah.
Spoilers! No! It's spoiler time. Welcome to the spoiler area. People die. I just started saying that every time. Every time, but I don't want to say because then it spoils the spoiler immediately.
And I think there's just like a few spoilers we should talk about. Specifically, what the bullying was at the beginning. It was those girls walking down the street getting pantsed by the bullies.
Yeah, there's some like what you would say are like popular girls that are out and they're like, oh, cool. And they're like, oh, can we take a picture with you? They're like, wow, yes, that's so exciting. Yes, come take a picture with us. And then they use that as an opportunity to prank them by showing off their magic underwears, as they call it.
And the shift in, I don't remember which one. Who is it? What's her name? I don't remember. East? Yeah, Chloe. Is it Chloe? Who was the Molly Mormon one? I think that was Chloe East.
Chloe East.
The shift in Chloe East's performance at that moment
Sister Paxton
was really resounding because she went from being this like chipper young girl who was all excited and everything to crying and being really, really upset. And I think that really set the tone for the movie and their personalities, because Sophie Thatcher's character, Sister Barnes, is very much like, I'm here to help people. I'm here to change people's lives. Like my life was potentially changed. Yeah. And we need to help Chloe, Sister Paxton, get to that same feeling. And I really, really liked that shift. And when they were walking down the street at that moment, that was one of the most resonating moments in the movie for me.
It is kind of mentioned there between the two of them that like it seems like Sophie Thatcher's Sister Barnes' character is the more successful of the two of them.
Oh,
she has more converts. That's what they
Yeah, she's so to me, it seemed like Sister Paxton was fairly new.
Yes,
she was just brought on. Sister Barnes has been there for a while.
Has at the very least had more success. So like they kind of make this out to be like they put Sophie Thatcher's character kind of on this pedestal in comparison of the two of them. One is made out to be better than the other, which is interesting because then like things happen throughout the movie. You like witness their dynamic and like. I feel like Chloe East's character, Sister Paxton, kind of was an underdog that came through to the end of this movie, and I wasn't expecting it, which I really enjoyed. Like, you're really expecting. I feel like they've even in the marketing, they've like focused on Sophie Thatcher as the person. I feel like she's also. I don't recognize Chloe East from anything. I don't know if I've seen her in anything else. I have seen Sophie Thatcher in other things. She is like arguably a bigger name as an actress, but it is really interesting to see like you were expecting more things to come of Sophie Thatcher's character, and then Sister Paxton, Chloe East's character, really comes out of the woodworks in this movie.
Yeah, the only thing I'd seen her in it was The Fabelmans. She was also in The Wolf of Snow Hollow, which you really liked.
Oh yeah.
So, but yeah, I really enjoyed that. Jumping forward, Jar Jar Binks. No, I'm just kidding. We don't actually.
That's far forward.
We don't actually have to jump into that. The blueberry pie. So
tell me about the blueberry pie.
Blueberry pie I thought was a genius move from Hugh Grant. So he's not allowed to be alone with these women. So he tells them his wife's in the other room, and she's
making blueberry pie.
He has his and hers mug.
Yeah, he's got a mug that says like hubby on it.
And he also
really
has
selling this
He also
point.
has a cup with it later. It looks like he just bought a whole set from Target.
Because he has a mug and a cup. They are two separate things that say hubby. It's like a blue cup with white letters on it. Super funny.
Incredibly creepy,
Yes.
but really like a nice attention
Really
to detail.
thoroughly selling the point, because for the first little bit, he is trying to keep up this whole facade, right? That he's like, oh yes, I'm this safe person. I have a wife. She's making blueberry pie. He lets them believe this for quite a long time before he flat out was like, okay, so that's a lie, and you believed it. Why did you believe it? Kind of stuff.
I thought it was genius though, because it really delves into religion, because he puts the candle down that has blueberry pie on it with the label facing away from
them.
The evidence is in front of your face, and you just can't see the label. Oh,
it's good stuff.
So good. Because like the metaphor there, it is put in front of yourself, in front of your face. Religion is put in front of your face the whole time. You're just not reading the label. That's smart. Hey, I'm sorry, but that was really cool.
Yeah.
My only disappointment with that is all the marketing materials for this movie gave away the blueberry pie.
Blueberry pie, yeah.
And
I think it was even in the trailer. There's a shot of her turning around the thing, and it says blueberry pie on it.
I was actually really disappointed about that.
Yeah, I feel like they should have kept that one.
As soon as he left and he said she was going to put a pie in the oven or something, I was like, I get it. He's going to light a candle.
It's like, okay, well now that's
marketing.
You've done away with this.
2024.
No, but what I really enjoy, and a really strong point that he makes in this movie is that he tells them these things. He tells you, my wife is making a blueberry pie. My wife is here. He's like, you for a long time believed these things. He keeps going with it, even though at this point it is quite obvious there is no woman in this house. He has no wife, and he kind of stabs them with that. It's like, I told you this thing, despite all of this evidence. You saw the pie that said blueberry. You saw this candle that said blueberry pie on it, right?
Yeah.
At this point, there should have been a woman in the house. There is no. My wife is not here. Do you still? He asked them flat. I was like, do you still believe that? Like, there is no evidence that I have a wife whatsoever, but I have told you this, and you believe it. And so, like, that's a huge portion of what religion is. It is your belief and what it means to you and stuff like that. And he really he hits them hard with that question. But I'm like, wow, that is a compelling thought, Mr. Reed, Hugh Grant's character in this movie.
It was very deep. I did really enjoy that when he leads them towards into this like little church he's built in his house.
Built a church inside of his house in the center of it.
Yeah, I like how he presents them with two doors, and at that point he's like, do you still believe that behind one of these doors is my wife?
Yeah, because he basically tells them, he's like, oh, sorry, the front door is locked. It's on a timer, which is a crazy thing, first of all.
Who puts a timer?
Yeah, and they think that's crazy too, right? But he tells them, okay, you are free to go. You are completely safe. Leave at your leisure. Just go out the back. Go out the back door because the front door is locked. And he puts these two doors in front of them. And he's like, do you believe if you go out this door that it will lead you to the outside of my house?
Something I think is really genius about the door locking thing that I hadn't actually thought of until right now. And I guess that's the point of discussing movies.
Yeah, here we are.
I mean, it kind of delves into religion as a whole, because sometimes there is truth. Right? A lot of times there is truth, and weaved into the truth are the lies, right? So when you have something like the doors on a locking mechanism, he says, this is something that I just have in my house. It is just a thing.
It's just a thing
that's going
part
on.
of my life.
You're going to deal with that because that's a thing I deal with. It's not going to unlock until the morning.
Yeah.
But you're going to have to deal with it. And I think that's also another really good metaphor. Obviously, it was a device used by the writers to make it so they couldn't leave.
Of course.
Right? But I feel like they weaved that into the plot, into the narrative really, really well.
Absolutely.
That's pretty cool. I hadn't thought about that until right now. But
yeah, and then they're in this church setting in the center of his house, and then he just sits and really digs into what you believe and why, and how many other, he calls them iterations of religion exist. He gets into this really compelling discussion about how Monopoly is not the original iteration of that game. Landlord's game, exactly. That existed, invented by a woman, completely done away with because they come in and copyright Monopoly, and that's a huge thing now, right? And so that's an iteration of a thing. Then there are further iterations of Monopoly. He compares that to other religious texts and Bibles and stuff like that. It's a whole thing that he really goes into.
I was just talking about actually an episode of BoJack Horseman with Emily this morning, in which he calls himself a Xerox of a Xerox, or a copy of a copy.
Yeah.
And how much I love that that metaphor, because once you copy the original thing, it is no longer what it was. And then once you copy that thing, it is even further flung from itself. So he basically describes religion as that same thing. It is a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy.
Right,
and
exactly.
it doesn't matter what religion you believe in. That is just fact.
Right.
Right. Like at the end of the day, it is the truth that each religion has similarities and differences. Nothing is ever the same,
and
but they are built off of each other.
He gets deep into that and compares them to all these different kinds of religions and stuff through different cultures and all that kinds of thing. What is interesting about his character, though, is he's sitting here breaking down what they see as their faith, right, and stuff. He is a well-read and well-researched man who's researched into lots and lots of different religions.
He has put his entire life into this.
And he said he was looking for like the one true religion, and he didn't want to find it. He didn't want to know, you know? And then he says he found it. And that's where this movie takes a bizarre turn.
Very bizarre
in this third act, you know, where you start delving into what that is, what he says he has found as the one true religion.
Yeah. When he said that, I lost him a little bit.
I was curious where that was going.
I was like, okay, so you just said you were searching so hard and then you found one. And I did like the way it went with that. But I didn't expect it. I didn't see that coming.
Yeah. But he's sitting here consistently bashing down these two religions and belief systems and stuff, and they are unwavering. They are strong in their faith. Which is great. They are very strong-willed characters, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
Both Sister Paxton and Sister Barnes.
And I think a point was raised throughout all this that's like, it doesn't matter if yours is the one true religion. If it's the one that you're believing in, that's you.
Yes.
And I think that's where his character goes wrong here, right? If I were to say that, like, he is so fixated on finding the truth that he forgets about just being yourself. And he does talk about that.
Yeah,
they all actually kind of talk about that.
There's a minute where he's like, you know, if it's just something you're told, what does it matter then? And they're like, you know, it's what it means to you. And he goes, exactly, right? It is what it means to like you. Yes, exactly. What it does for you.
Yes. I mean, I've said a lot that like my mom is an incredibly devout religious woman, and I never want her to lose that.
Yeah.
Because it means so much to her and it means so much to those around her.
Yes.
And I never want her to lose that.
No,
and
that's
it's for
honestly,
that reason.
That's honestly been a big thing for me as a person who has absolutely no religious affiliation in his life whatsoever. I still can respect religious groups and things they believe in and stuff because there are some great things about it, some sense of community and like having this. I think it is very important to have something to believe in and something to hold on to, you know, to something to hope for and things like that. And so I think while there are other not so great sides of religion and stuff, I think there are also very important things like that. So like belief system and stuff like that is huge. It's a very important thing. And these two will not let go of it, no matter what they hear. They even admit to him, like, you've made some very compelling points, some very big things we should be thinking about, but they're still not breaking down.
Yeah,
I love that. But so they go deeper into this inner sanctum of his, right? They pick one of the two doors, either disbelief or belief.
I love that they led to the same spot.
Tricked you. It's the illusion of choice, right? It's they're going to lead you down to the same cellar.
Metaphor, baby.
I love
metaphor.
It's a beautiful thing there. It's like there's a meme format where it's like a picture of a cow in front of this divided hallway, and then eventually, like halfway down, it stops being divided. It's one big hallway.
Very much that.
Leads them down to where he's like, okay, I believe I have found the one true religion. I have found a miracle, and you guys are going to witness it. And so here comes this like withered old hag of a woman into the room. Some real monstrous kind of stuff a la The Substance. She walks into the room. He's like, you're going to watch this woman die. She brings a blueberry pie with her that is filled with poisonous whatevers. And she eats it and dies.
Yep.
And then he's like, you are going to witness this woman come back to life in some crazy miracle. Then you will understand where I come from and you will throw your religion away, right?
It was at this point that I realized that Chloe East's character was the one who was feeling disbelief. Because she notices that as they walk away from the room, they come back, she notices that the body has changed.
Yes, because for a moment there's what's his name? The guy from the church who knows their whereabouts.
That one guy.
That one guy. There's a guy who's from their church who like notices the fact that
he's
they're
just
gone.
another mission. No, he's just another missionary.
He's another missionary, and so
I think he's either the mission president or just another missionary assigned to help them.
And so he comes to this house because he knows
Topher Grace plays it.
Yes, Topher Grace.
Whatever that's worth.
He comes to the place actually looking for the two of them because he knows the locations they were going to be hitting up that day, trying to talk to people. And so there's a moment where they go away from this body that has just died, and they have to come back.
Yeah.
And so in that instance, yes, Chloe East's character does notice the head is in a different position. So at first she's like, oh, the body has moved, it's living again.
Yeah.
They are very smart characters. Both Sister Paxton and Sister Barnes.
But I think that this really expertly shows the difference in their belief systems, because Sophie Thatcher, it looks at it and is like, no, it's the same. No, it's the same. We need to focus on what we're doing.
Other things in mind.
She is so concerned with getting out, which obviously they should both.
Of course, why wouldn't you? They go down to the cellar. There are no other doors. They are trapped down here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really I loved that difference, though, because it does show the difference in religious people,
which is great to show like it exists within the same world, right? These are both two religious Mormon people who believe in the same stuff in different ways and to different degrees, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But I definitely really assumed just based on knowing nothing that like Sister Paxton, Chloe East's character, was going to be the one more devout than Sophie Thatcher's character, right? And that kind of flips, and that is not the case, right?
It absolutely flips it. And even looking back, I'm like, oh, I should have known. But like, I liked that I was left in that disbelief almost, where, she notices that, and then it turns out that this person is still alive and maybe was never dead in the first place.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
They definitely was dead.
It breaks that down where it's like, oh no, it's a miracle. She says some words about like what she saw on the other side, that kind of stuff. And Sophie Thatcher's character is pretty instantly like, this is some trick, you're trying to play with us, and then she dies. Then Mr. Reed's character takes a box cutter, swift right through the neck. Whoa.
Unexpected.
Very unexpected. So quick.
Completely unexpected. I did not expect her to die.
They don't set it up at all with like, he's got the knife in his hand. You didn't know he had a knife at all.
No.
The two of them had a weapon. They had a plan to stab him at some point, but
she was about to say the secret
They had
word.
a code word, exactly.
Yeah.
But you were not expecting him to be prepared for that and just like, well, she's dead. Because she this entire time has been the one speaking out against him. She's the one who's been the most vocal and challenging him, right?
And to some extent, until this moment in the movie, which the whole movie from here on out was completely different than I expected.
Yes, this is where it really shifted.
This is where the third act started, and it was a completely different movie, which is fine. But the movie really led you to believe that he wasn't going to do anything bad to them.
Yeah.
Even though he potentially just killed a woman with a pie, you were still hoping. There was that shred of hope
because
that Hugh Grant's character,
and he's charming.
Yes.
Maybe he actually doesn't mean them any harm, because at this point it's like, okay, maybe he really does just want to try to educate these two, albeit in a pretty scary way. He wants to educate these people, and then it's like, okay, so he wants witnesses for this miracle of his, so he can push whatever theory he has.
And going back to the whole ex-Mormon Redditor guy, or even to a certain extent my dad, like there are people who want you to just hear their opinions and don't necessarily want to change your beliefs, but want you to know that your beliefs aren't what they think their beliefs are.
You need to hear me out.
And so I really believed that that's where he was going with this. I thought that he was going to let them go, or they were going to escape. Well, I obviously knew that he wasn't, because it was a horror movie,
right?
But some part of me was hoping for that, right? And then she dies.
And then he kills one of them. And then he kills Sophie Thatcher's character. It's like, oh, that's not what I was expecting. I really thought you were going to, if not both of you, at least Sophie Thatcher was going to be the final girl. Yeah. And she has made herself out to be the more resolute, more strong-minded of the two of them, the one who's going to challenge what he says. And I love the fact that I did not personally have a lot of faith in Sister Paxton. I was like, oh no, she's the more timid and shy. Like, I don't know if she's got the guts to take this guy on, because he's clearly made himself out to be this very well thought out, very empowering person in this house. And she really pushes back this entire time. And she starts to break down everything he's done from the moment they walked in the door. Yeah. She was like, I noticed this thing. I noticed this thing. This thing meets to this.
She's a Gemini.
She's straight.
She pays attention.
She gets every single thing right. Everything she calls against him, he's like, shit, you're right. You nailed it. So she basically calls this experiment bullshit. She's like, I think you killed a woman. You brought a different person in here and used some kind of secret door in this place. There's a dead body in there. That lady never died.
I loved this. I loved her whole unraveling, because that feels, again, going back to the faith metaphor, because the whole movie was just a faith metaphor. That's how it felt when you discover things, right?
Yeah.
I won't go into it, but there's a whole book and a bunch of documents that were written about basically dissecting the Mormon church and flipping it on its head. And I went and read all of that stuff when I left the church. And I mean, I spent hours just reading this information and learning all this. And that is how it felt, is like going back through all of those things and realizing those things and being like, I saw that.
Yeah,
I thought that was
been obvious from the beginning, right? And I do love they point out things that could have been obvious to us as audience members. We saw these things happen that she was pointing out, and yet it still felt like, wow, you're right. You caught onto these things. She was a very smart character.
Incredibly.
And it's wild, the fact that he takes a step back. He doesn't say yes or no. He's like, okay, Prove it then. Go for it. Show me that there's a secret door in the cellar, that leads to some other place. Guess what? It does. And it goes into this further thing where, you find out, yes, it's been all bullshit this whole time.
Yeah.
And he gets into this big rant about how, what is the one true religion? I found it. You know what the one true religion is? Control. Woo!
Yeah.
What a that mic drop right there.
And he's right.
Mm-hmm.
He's totally right. I mean, at the end of the day,
and she even sees that too. It kind of breaks her spirit a little bit. She's still not necessarily dropping her religion or anything, her faith or anything like that. But she she understands the point he's trying to make this entire time. What he said, and he's right. And what he's saying.
It's true. I mean, I don't want to go anti-religion here.
No, exactly, because that's not what we're trying to say here. That's not our
substance. But to a certain extent, all religions have some emphasis on control, right? I mean, for whatever it may be. And I think that a lot of religions do have good motives, but you can dive it down into just that simple as control.
Not even just in the fact of people controlling you. It also like I mentioned, there are important things about people who have religion as the backbone of their life. It also gives you control of things in your life too. Things that it makes things make sense to you. You can have some handle on things.
Very true.
It's just you were talking to me earlier about how when leaving the church and stuff like that, that control was lost on you. You were the floor was taken out from underneath you. Your floor, your surroundings was put you in a whole new world and stuff like that. It's
and I lost
horrifying.
A sense of control.
Yes,
I really did. I really appreciated that metaphor. I mean, I keep saying that, but I did.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then so this is where the movie lost me completely. He's got a whole bunch of other women trapped
in this house
basement.
in these cages. They don't speak. They're malnourished.
And he says that they like it, that they're under control. Now, this was
because he's convinced them that's what they want.
I don't mean to make this make sense for the movie, but this is how I interpreted it.
Yes.
It felt very cult mentality.
I was just about to say that. I'm okay, so now you've just got your own cult.
Yeah,
Hugh Grant.
It felt like the Manson family situation, right, where these people needed heat. I think that this is my opinion of what he was going for here.
Yeah.
He is, in a sense, a cult leader. He brings people into his house. He dissects their religions, not necessarily just Mormons. He probably does it to all religions, all faiths.
Right, exactly. And kind of just breaks them down mentally. Just breaks them from a fundamental.
Exactly. It's exactly
their foundation.
Exactly like Manson did to the Manson family, right?
Exactly.
It is very much like that, where he breaks it down. Then he leaves them with this. It is control. There's nothing else. And so at that point, they're completely devoid of they get to that low point that I was in. I was susceptible to cult mentality at that point in my life, right? He gets them to that point.
And he takes advantage of that.
And then he takes advantage of that. He says, I will give you a new life, a better life. In this cage is better than being outside.
Yeah, because there's this really neat thing that happens where when they first come in, he takes their coats, and in their coats has the key for their bike locks that are locked on the front gate of his house, right? And when they go, there's a moment where we need to leave. They try to escape. They find out the door is locked. They go back for their coats because they're like, shoot, our coats have the key in it, right? When they get back to their coats, the key is in the wrong pocket.
Yeah, I like that.
And at first you think, oh, he made a mistake. He just willy-nilly put it in the wrong pocket. But then later on, Chloe East's character, Sister Paxton, gets in front of a door that is locked with their bike lock, and she has the key in her pocket. So she even tells him, she's like, you want me to believe it's control because it's been everything that has happened now has been because you decided it was going to be that way. You didn't put it in the wrong pocket. You put it in exactly the pocket you knew, because you knew I was going to be in this situation because you controlled the situation. You put me here. I was going to be the one in front of that door. It was really cool. I thought that was a neat little twist moment there. I did not expect that either.
At all. I thought he just had made a mistake, which is exactly what he wanted us to believe.
Exactly right. And that's his whole thing. That's why he makes you think he's smarter than you. He has this power. Everything that has happened has been under my will, under my control. I foresee everything that's going on, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't work. She ends up finding a way to best the man and get one up on him.
She had a weapon on him, so she ends up just stabbing him right through the throat, which was fantastic. I love watching him get stabbed.
Yeah, wild. Especially since at that point, I'm like, okay, I'm no longer rooting for Mr. Reed in any sense whatsoever.
Then I would say the scariest part of the movie for me. So she's lost in this house. The doors are still locked. She's trying to find her way out, right? She leaves him stabbed on the ground. We didn't see him die, though. And then when she gets up and she's by Sister, what's the other? Barnes' body, and she's all sad that she's dead. Then she just turns around and gets stabbed right in the stomach.
Yes.
That shook me.
Whoa, yeah, because you were not aware that Hugh Grant was even up and walking, let alone the fact he'd followed her all the way and there's one quick stab to the belly.
Yeah, that was crazy. And then I mean, yeah, then Sister Paxton's still alive somehow.
Yeah.
Or Sister Barnes still alive.
Oh yeah, Sister Barnes definitely. But there's one really important thing that like really rocked me.
Oh yes,
that happens right before something happens in a sec. We'll talk about. So Mr. Reed is obviously going to die. He's been stabbed in the neck. He knows he's on his way out. Now he stabbed Sister Paxton. She's also going to die. He's kind of toying with her a little bit as she's dying, and he kind of mocks her and says, pray. Why don't you pray? That'll help everything, right? And she flat out to his face, as a person who is a devout Mormon woman, says, prayer doesn't work. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
And but it is I was shocked to hear her say that. This person who is like sit and devout in her religion, believes all of this stuff, and is not throwing that away, but says it doesn't work. But doesn't it feel nice to like sit and wish good and think about someone that is not you for a second?
Yes.
Like that was incredible to me.
This is the first thing I told Emily about when I got home from the movie.
I loved that line out of the entire thing. Really like made the movie good for me.
She even describes how prayer it doesn't work. She talks about the great prayer experiment where they took two groups of people.
Right, that's right.
Two groups of people dealing with the same illness. They prayed for half of them, did not pray for the other half. Both of them ended up in the same situation. I had read about that when I was leaving the church. And anyway, that's not the point. The point is when someone says like thoughts and prayers. Now that's a memed thing at this point.
Right.
But there is something to be said about having someone think about you that hard.
Yes.
And speak your name out loud. Like that, there is power to that. Whether it is, metaphysical or spiritual, that's not part of that's not the point. The point is there is power to that. And I think now growing up, there was a good portion, probably a good 60% of my life where I didn't believe I was talking to anyone, but I would still find myself praying because it gave me courage. It gave me strength. That is something that I miss. I'll be honest. That is something I miss from being religious, where I would pray and feel better because I was thinking about myself. I was centering myself. Every religion, every a great religious community has something like that, right? Whether it's meditation, whether it's prayer, it is all about you. It's centering yourself. It's thinking about yourself. Yeah. And thinking about others in a very focused way.
That part really rocked me, especially as a non-religious person who doesn't pray, on a regular basis. I was like, wow, that is a really incredible way to think about that and really to put that. And what I also adored about this area or about this moment of the movie is that is the first moment where you actually see Mr. Reed's facade crumble.
Oh yeah.
You see his whole, he feels powerful. He feels on top the whole time. He is resolute. He doesn't falter even when they are flat out, calling him on his bullshit. He's like, nope, I'm going to stay cool and level-headed. That is the first one you see his spirit kind of break.
Yeah.
And then he starts to crawl his way towards her body, and just kind of being sad about the fact that he's about to die and no one will pray for him. And then, Sophie Thatcher's character suddenly alive, whacks him in the head with a wooden board with some nails in it.
To be fair, he we didn't see her dead body in a obvious way.
Right.
But I did like this because it was the twist on that, what do you believe? Do you have faith thing? Was this a hand coming in to help? That kind of disbelief thing. I liked that because they very well could have left the movie on a negative note of no, there's no chance any religion's real. But instead they chose to go this way with it, which was very different than that.
No, I really enjoyed it, and I loved the way it ended too. It was a really neat
with
ending.
her Chloe East's character walking out into the snow. She finally gets a phone call out because his house was filled with metals, so phones didn't work in there. She finally gets a phone call out, and then she sees a butterfly on her finger, and that butterfly then is disappeared in the next shot. So kind of makes you wonder.
It makes you exactly wonder. First of all, it's it doesn't say she is dying flat out, but you're led to assume, okay, so she's probably dying in this instance.
Yeah.
And is that what is in her head at that moment, what she sees because it's what she believes in? Because earlier it talks about, what she wants to be in her next life. I want to come back as a butterfly, because that's and spread joy and stuff like that. So that's what she sees on her finger. But then, the next shot cuts away, cuts back. There's no butterfly on her finger. And it's really cool.
And I mean, that's a whole other topic that isn't really necessary, but something else that was touched on in this movie is when you're dying, all the chemicals that go into your brain and make you see things. It's a huge plot in Midnight Mass.
Yeah, it's a
beautiful monologue.
Beautiful monologue that goes into that kind of stuff. Check out Midnight Mass. Wonderful show.
But anyway, it kind of touched on that a little bit here, where what she was seeing when she was dying. Yeah. And I thought that was really beautiful. So anyway, that's Heretic.
That's Heretic. That's basically like we got into that into the plot synopsis more than we do in other ones, but I feel like most all of it was worth mentioning.
Yeah, I think it's important to talk about, and even if you've seen the movie, I think especially if you've seen the movie, I hope you got something out of this, and I would love to hear other people's thoughts. I've talked to a couple other people that were also Mormons who have seen this movie and had very similar opinions. One of them, and in very negative opinions. The other one. So
it's a conflicting movie, I'm sure, if you're a person who grew up in the LDS faith,
Yeah, but at the end of the day, everyone I talked to about this is like, yeah, it's a good movie if you've been Mormon, or even if you are Mormon, you should go see this movie.
Exactly.
I actually do agree with that. And for me, I was back and forth on this for a while, but I think for me, I got 4 blueberry candles.
That's fair. I think I'm on. I think, gosh, I don't even. What did I even rate it on Letterboxd? I can't even remember. 3.5.
No. Of course I know.
You would know. You pay close attention to every time I post something on Letterboxd. I'm like, Derek is going to see this and maybe have something to say about it. But yeah, I would also give
social media.
I'd say give it about like 3.5 wooden nails sticking out of a wooden board. I guess it's kind of messed up though, isn't it? Yeah. So yeah, no.
If you're new here, make sure you go check out our other stuff. We got a whole other podcast.
We got a whole other podcast where we talk about the really, the bad side of the horror community and all that kind of stuff. Here we're talking about the newer releases, stuff that may or may not be good or bad, but
we don't know.
Yeah, tell us what you thought about it in the comments, and if you have a better Jar Jar Binks impression, Misa want to hear it.
Such a Misa want a pizza.
Misa want a pizza. Your
I don't think. How does Jar Jar even sound?
I don't even know at this point. That's the most recent thing I've seen of Jar Jar Binks was Hugh Grant's impression of it.
It's been a while, man. Misa,
oh gosh,
Misa horny. Okay, I'm gonna go.
No, okay.
Hey, thanks for tuning in.
Thank you as always very much.
And Garfield be with you.
Be with you.
Stay spooky.
Goodbye.